Howdy, and welcome to our week 4 of Weave and Stitch Along. Can you believe it? With this week, we are already halfway through. So if this were to be a college class, we would call it midterm. I can hardly believe it, and there's still so much more to come. And I already know a lot of things that we won't be able to get to, but we'll talk about it later. Um, Take a look at our little display. My son this morning jokingly asked, Mama, is this going to be a 3-hour long movie? And well, while I can't promise, um, I will at least try to keep it shorter than the previous sessions. But there's always so much to tell and to share. And actually, this is um, yeah. Before we get to the show and tell, let's take a quick look at the little display that we have here. Looks pretty harmless, doesn't it? All right, so this is what we will be doing this week. I titled this week's session Connect the Dots. And this is a little bit a reminder of childhood memories, a few things that children still do today, and well, adults too, is connecting the dots. You have a paper with a whole bunch of numbers, and when you connect the numbers properly, you'll actually get some type of picture. And we will be doing that this week. So I hope you all can count from 1 to 28, and if not, this will be a good practice, because we will use that mechanism to learn how to embroider these little designs here. Connecting the dots, and this looks also like a puzzle, which is another nice pastime thing, putting puzzles together, right? There is a third one, but I will mention that later. Let me just hold up one of those here so that you can see this a little bit closer. So it's pretty much just 4 loops that go around, and that's all we will be doing today. So there's not much to it. Once you get started, questions will pop up as like, okay, how do I do that? Where do I start? How do I get around? What do I do first? What do I do next? And this is where the connect the dots will come in. All right. So if you look at this display, there's one of these motifs on a square. By the way, I call this week's motif patience, because all of the things that we discussed before, connecting the dots and playing puzzles, do require patience, and so does embroidery. So this is our patience design when we practice it. We have the design on our square, which is made with a pin loom, with a zoom loom, and we have it on the hexagon, which is made with our original TURTLE Hexagon Loom. But you also see that I have 3 different ones here. I'll mention it just briefly here. We talk about it later. Take a look. These 2 are pretty much the same size, right? And then here, there's one very tiny one and very big one. So another thing that we will learn today is how we can shrink and zoom in or make larger one particular design. All right, so that's a quick overview of what we will be dealing with today. But before we get to that, I do want to do a very brief recap. I hope by now that you all once in a while peek in at Pinterest. We have a weave and stitch along Pinterest board where I started to collect your works or pictures of your works, and everything is by far exceeding expectations on my end. We have a beautiful collection of pictures at this point, and I do hope that it will increase going forward throughout the rest of this weave along. But I very much urge you to go take a look at all the beautiful creations. It's a source of inspirations. The examples are so different, and it's amazing. I just want to show you a few from last week and from our mystery challenge, which, by the way, was a lot of fun. I just want to show you quickly a few examples here during our show and tell. Can we please zoom in? So this is from our mystery, where I didn't give any other instructions than verbal instructions, and it was so funny to see all the highs here. This one is from Teresa, and this one stunned me because take a look just at the photography that she did. Uh, Here's her square, and then on a beautiful background that perfectly frames and supports her work right here. And I just thought there were a few more, but I just wanted to pick one from Teresa here because that really encouraged me to show you this. So very simple design, beautiful photography. So thank you to everybody who actually puts a lot of work into taking very pretty pictures. Then the next one here is from Monica. And take a look at all those highs. I had such a I got such a kick out of this to look at this. Each of those highs is a different color. And she managed to squeeze in an extra 9 highs on her little square. By the way, this is husband approved. Monica got support from her husband in working on this, and I think the results are just absolutely stunning and very, very sweet. Talking about giggling, this one is an example from Zwaantje from the Netherlands, and she brought up a very good point, which I was aware of, but didn't think about uh, in the context of the weave along. The words hi, hi, here of course mean hello, which is kind of the hello, 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 hello was the purpose behind the echo. Svante wrote that, well, initially this was kind of hard to understand why I said he, and this was like why I wanted to make he. And that's difference in language, because in several European languages where you simply pronounce hi differently, it's an abbreviation for a giggle. So from Zvantje's perspective, all those HIs are little giggles. And when she shared that with the group, we actually all had to giggle. So thank you, Zvantje, for pointing this out, and thank you for making us all giggle. That much about the mystery. It was a lot of fun, yes, and there will be one more mystery to work on. I think it's week 6. Yes, it will be week 6. So if you had fun doing this mystery, there will be one more, all right? But I also want to point out that it is not too late to get started uh, with this weave and stitch along. As a matter of fact, all the documentation and videos and what have you will stay up as long as the internet lets us, for people to try out and go back to and get started and work through it at any time. And this is an example from Carolyn. Carolyn just started a couple of days ago, and this morning posted her first hexagon, which is very dear to my heart. So congratulations on a great start, Carolyn. And here is another one from Naomi. Naomi chose, by the way, this beautiful purple, which immediately pops up in your mind. In your eyes, it's like, wow, this is a beautiful background of fabric color. This is awesome. But it also comes with a story. Naomi said, well, I started a little bit late, but here I am. And also I used this beautiful purple because I bought this yarn for my temperature blanket, but then I decided to not use it. And this weave and stitch along allows me to use this yarn and make squares to fill in the gaps on my temperature blanket, which I think is a brilliant idea. Now, some of you may ask, what's a temperature blanket? We started in January uh, a weave along, and it's on Facebook in the group Temperature Blanket Pin Loom weave along. So this is the separate group. And on Ravelry, it's in the Looms to Go group. There's a discussion board, 2018 Temperature Blanket Weave Along. This came about, there are a lot of groups that do temperature blankets, um, but none for weavers. So we decided to start our own. And some of you now will ask us like, okay, what is a temperature blanket? Let me very briefly uh, show you what this looks like. And I think at this point we need to zoom out, please. Thank you. And these are the beginnings of my um, temperature blanket. And here is the row that I'm currently working on. Let me quickly explain to you. Each of these little hexagons, you can make squares as well, is a day of a year. So this is January 1st, January 2nd, and so forth of 2018 in the place where I live, which is Texas. And you see how this progresses. They're just put into rows. I chose to go back and forth. There are different ways on how you can arrange your motifs. And you can see this is like here was a little bit chilly, and it's now getting warmer and warmer and warmer. Where now this is in May, and you see here the first 100-degree day. That's like whoopee-doo. Yes, Texas is there. Um, so this is so a temperature blanket is for a certain year. You can pick any year, one motif per year. I have chosen to do the temperature high, and there are good websites available where you can look up high temperatures and you know just color code them. When it comes to color coding, I have I would say I call these classical colors. So this is like here's everything less than 51 degrees Fahrenheit, and here it gets a little bit warmer and warmer and warmer. And here we have the 100 degrees and over 100 degrees. Let me just hold this up a little bit so that you can see this a little bit better. So this is my color coding key. And then, for example, yesterday it was 94 degrees. So for yesterday, I will make this orange and add it to my blanket. So anyway, if you do the math, it's really hard to fit 365 squares or hexagons into any shape. So you always have a few extras. And this is where Naomi comes in. So she is going to use, for those extras, she will use the color that she likes so much with the embroidery on it. So pretty much Naomi is combining two weave-alongs. And I thought that was really pretty cool. There's also on Facebook there is Greta, and she is planning on doing the same thing. There were a few more that mentioned that, but Greta and Naomi have definitely solid plans on doing so. Can we please zoom in again? Thank you. All right, here are a few more examples, and this time this is from week 3, where I asked you to be creative and where we learned the 2 stitches, the straight stitch and the lazy daisy stitch, to make flowers. And oh, what a delight this was. It was really hard to pick just a few and not show them all. If you want to see them all, go to the Pinterest board. I do want to show you here, this is Willie, and Willie used sock yarn for her flowers. Look here, this one is the Lazy Daisy one, and this one is the straight stitch. And this is a variegated sock yarn, which automatically change colors. And take a look at it, it almost looks like a painting, doesn't it? So the message here is try a variegated yarn and see what you get. Might be as amazing as this one. Here's Barbara. And Barbara, when she posted her picture, she said, "Oh, this is so much fun. The only thing that prevented me from doing more is because I ran out of space." And take a look of that. She really used all the space that she could get in a very beautiful way. Now imagine you have this hexagon as part of multiples, and this is like when you really can start to imagine the flower fields. Beautiful thing. Also take a look here at what Cindy is doing. Cindy is making all these really cute little charity bags for little girls and little school children. And so she started, and she's sewing them out of fabric, and she started to decorate them with a hexagon that has some of the embroidery that we're doing right now. So again, you can see that on Pinterest or on Ravelry in her projects, but I picked this example that she posted this week because what she did is she had this fabric, and she picked up the color of the flowers on the fabric and copied them into her embroidery. There's the blue flower right here, and then there are the pink flowers right here, and she matched even the color for the leaves that are spread around. Isn't that perfect? I thought I really was thrilled when I saw that. So the idea is copy your background, make it match to the environment, which is, yeah, I have no words really. Um, this is as much as I can show you today about week 3, but I do want to show you one more thing right here. Yeah, well, I think there is no week where I don't mention Hazel, but she's just very active and involved, and she just knows a lot. And I so much appreciate the knowledge that she's sharing with the group. It's simply amazing. Uh, what I want to show you here is I noticed that people are starting to think, what if? What else can I do with what I've learned? What else can I try? Where does this go? How can I apply what I learned to other projects? And Hazel is doing a great thing here where she is taking, this is just the example from week 2. I think because that, for the purpose, it shows the best thing. So this was her square example for week 2. But Hazel points out that there are a lot of people that have looms like the tiny quilt weaver square that are woven in the bias. So Hazel is taking it on to translate what we're doing on the square looms into bias. And here's one of the examples. She has all 3 weeks so far done, and you can find them on Ravelry. So if you have not been able to stitch along with us because you didn't have the right loom, here's one more option. I will pick up on all the what is and what to do next, applications and things like that in week 8, when we will have a little chat about what comes next. All right, and at that point I will definitely pick up on that, but I do want to show you that at this point, so that if you have not been able to participate, here's an opportunity. All right, that much about show and tell. Let's gently move over to our class today. There is one reminder we talked about. We are halfway through, and I would like to remind you at this point, or encourage you at this point, to get started on the border motifs for the table topper that we want to put together in week 8. You have seen those designs in the getting ready session for the hexagons and for the squares. These are just suggestions, but this is what I will work off, addressing the 7 motifs that by then we will have for each of them. And the idea is just to minimally frame them so that we can make a tabletop, and there are a few more things that I will show once we assemble them. So I'm mentioning this now. We are halfway through the class, and those border or supplementing motifs will take time to make. You will need 30 hexagons plus 1 or 34 squares plus 1. The plus 1 you will understand later in the course. So make 31 hexagons or 35 squares. Again, these can be newly woven on with a yarn that you think will support your embroidery nicely, or you can make it a crazy quilt where you use up hexagons or squares that you have used, that you have as leftovers or scraps or from swatching or sampling yarns or what have you. Okay, so all you need really at this point is target 31 hexagons, target 35 squares. All right, and with this we will get started on this week's new stuff. And I think I would like to, can we please zoom out a little bit? Thank you. All right, week 4, connect the dots. And we already briefly talked about what we're going to do. We are making this little design. It looks very harmless and simple until you start thinking about how you're going to make it. So we will learn some patience here. This design this week was inspired by black work. And black work, as the author of this book, Leslie Wilkins, points out, has been around since the 1600s. The oldest, let me just take a quick look, the oldest still existing sampler is from 1598, and it's now in a museum in England. And so it has a very interesting history to it. And what you can do with it, let me just hold this up here a little bit, is you pretty much draw pictures with a single strand of black yarn. So this was very, very popular to decorate clothes, to tell stories. And since at that point they didn't have really very many books, this was also a great way to document and do samplers and things like that. And the reason why I mention that is because black work is frequently worked with straight stitches, but also a lot with back stitches. And today we will learn the back stitch. And as the word says, we will go backwards. We'll see more about that in a little while. But I just wanted to mention a little bit the history of black work when you hear that term, which then also later on, here's another book which is called Vintage Made Modern Folk Art Motifs. So when you get to pioneer times and things like that, black is not necessarily black, but it can also be red or blue, and then it's called red work or blue work. And the idea is very simple. You have a simple single strand and just draw pictures and a lot of pretty borders and patterns and things like that. Here in the background, it's probably a little bit hard to see, but this is a whole quilt, and each of those squares has a little design on it, which is very popular folk art. So that just as a background. You don't need any of those books, but if you really like this type of stitching, this is my new favorite. It's Black Work Made Easy by Leslie Wilkins. I really enjoy the book because it has absolutely tons of samples and patterns in it. So we are choosing just, so this one is derived from this book. I can just actually show you, because this is not just copycatted from the book, but I just browsed through the book. And so if you see this pattern down here, let me just hold this up a little bit. This pattern down here, this is what I used to derive what we're going to work today. You see there are gazillions of more opportunities here. So if you start liking this, this might be a good choice. But no, you also find again online a lot. Or you can just use this one over and over again. We will talk about that later. All right, so let's get started. We will use the back stitch for our design. I am using, again, the Lion Brand Bonbon, the cotton, and this is more because this was the only black that I had. You could use also the red, or, well, this is more turquoise because I didn't have a blue, or any other yarn that you have on hand. Medium to thick weight would be my recommendation. For this pattern, I think the Lion Brand Bonbon Cotton is perfect for the square. And I just hold this up so that you can see it. All right, perfect for the square. And I think for the hexagon, I would have liked a little bit thicker yarn, but it's still, because there's so much contrast, it still comes out very well. All right, so let me see, where's the needle? The needle is on the Zoom Loom. So today we will start with the Zoom Loom. Let's put the hexagons aside for now. And let's get to work. Maybe you have noticed I prepped my loom for today. And I will show you why. For this example, we have to count thread to find the proper beginning. Let's do some prep here. I will show you a way that you can stitch the whole design in one without interruption. For that, you will need about 30 to 36 inches of thread or yarn. So I go with 36 to be on the safe side. So this is like 1, 2, and 3 times the length of a ruler. I make a slip knot close to the end, to one end, slip knot, and thread the other end into the needle. Okay, here we go. That'll do. Now we put this aside. Let me just take the rubber bands off here. So, because I noticed that a lot of people say they struggle with the rubber bands, which is probably, you know, number one, it's an approximation, but it's also, let me put this back on here. One of the things that make it a little bit difficult is that, you know, you don't always have corner nails here and here. It's an approximation. It works out good enough. We will actually not use the rubber bands this week. I just have them for verification, so we can put them aside for now. This week, you have to count. And to do so, I would like you to have 2 pins ready, okay? So let's take a look. Can we actually zoom in a little bit? Thank you. All right, yeah, here we can see this very well. I already have the nails, the needles positioned properly, so to make sure that I don't miscount, but I show you what you need to do. You have to count from the bottom up and from the left to the right. Note, Today we will not start in the center. We will start a little bit off-centered. Okay, and I can show you this here. What we want to do is, if you have this here, where's the center here? Yeah, that's right. Here is the center, right here, where the yellow dot is right now, okay? And in the center is no stitch. So we will begin a little bit off the center to the left. That will be our starting point, okay? And I'll show you now how to find that. We will count. So first we will count 16 threads up from the bottom. Let's do that together. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Can you see that? And then above that 16th thread, you put a needle like that. All right? And then to find the cross or the intersection, we will count 15 over from the left side, from this side. Let's do that together. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. And again, we go after the 15th thread is where we position our needle. Does that make sense? All right. And you can see here that those two pins intersect, and that's where we will start. If you now put on the rubber bands, and this is why I have them, and I just want to quickly show that to you. See if we can do this quickly. So here you go. Now you can see here would be the center. We're not starting in the center. The intersection is actually outside the center a little bit. Okay? So here, really precisely, it's here in this quadrant. So that is just to show you that you will not use the rubber bands this week, but that I make you count. You will need 2 pins, and you know, count up 16, count up 15, and where those intersect, that's where we will start. Okay, so we have the loom, we have the yarn. Now the only thing that's missing is that we need to have the pattern, right? And here we go. Let's move this aside for a minute. Ta-da! Yes, I was not kidding when I said connect the dot, that you will actually really will connect the dots. I have done it for a purpose, and I'll show you what. Because we will be using the back stitch in a continuous strand to make this motif. And what we will do is kind of really like connect the dot. We go to the next dot, that's where we will come out with the needle, and then we connect that to the previous work that we did. This one will be part of your worksheet this week. I suggest print out one, or maybe 2 if you can, and do one for practice. And then if you get confused, you can, while you work step by step, make your little dots, or you can just use what you used for practice as reference. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here is the S and E, which is start and end, and there's the 1. So we start here, which matches, let me just show you, which matches the intersection here, and then we will go 2 threads to the left to number 1. Can you see that? All right. Let me see if I can duplicate that. Then we will make another back stitch 2 to the left. We will make a back stitch in the diagonal going up like this, going up straight to 4, going over to 5, going a diagonal to 6, and to 7. Do you see how it already develops? Just here we go. There it is. So if you compare this now to the example, let me put this up here. I think I have I have enough space right here. If you compare this to the example, so there is the top left doodle right here, okay? But it tells you step by step on how to work it, okay? Let's continue our puzzle. We are at 7. After 7 comes 8, so we go down. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I think you can see where this is going, right? This is the second loop down here. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There's our third loop. Now we make the center across 21 to 22 to make this little square here in the center. 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And after 27, we go back to the beginning, which will be the end as well. Does that make sense? All right. You will find, you can doodle your own connect the dots, but you will also have this completed template with the numbers, and you can work with whatever you prefer. All right, let's get started. So let's take our loom and our thread. And yes, I am using the anchor method. I will put it to the right here, somewhere to the right, anywhere to the right. And there's a reason for it that will become clear when we're all done. Okay, so go between the fabric and the loom to the back side. There we go. Yes, I know it's a long thread, but it will get shorter very quickly. All right, and now I want you to come up exactly, let me show you. See that? Exactly where those pins intersect. There we go. And at that point, you can take out the pins and put them aside safely so that nobody gets hurt. All right, let's work on our first stitch. We want to go here from start to 1. We want to work this stitch. And remember, the stitch that we're going to use is called back stitch, right? So we are very tempted to work our way to the left, but we will work a back stitch, and I'll show you. It will probably make more sense after the first stitch. So we're going to work back. We want to go that way, but we want to work back. So we come out, this is actually 1, and we go back to the start. So we count 2 to the right, and then go down to make our first stitch. Okay? If you're confused, don't worry about it. Just trust the directions at this point. So from the starting point, we go back to the right over 2 threads to make our first stitch. And this will be our first stitch here from S to 1 or from 1 to S. Well, think about it. We went from 1 backwards to S. So now we find the next dot, which is 2, and we will stitch from that back to 1. So what you need to do is go 2 to the left to come up, and then we make a back stitch, and it's now really easy to find because you only need to go back to the previous stitch, okay? And go down. So we made another back stitch from 2 to 1. Let's do a few more together. We're going now, so the next point is 3, and we go back from 3 to 2. This is a diagonal, so we have to go 2 to the left. I just wiggle it, and 2 up. So this is where we are coming out. I think it will be clearer once we're up with the thread. So 2 to the left and 2 up to find the point 3. And now we make a back stitch to 2. All right, let's put this all in the center. There we go. Okay, our third back stitch. From 3 to 4, we just go straight up over 2 threads. So let's find number 4. Let's go up 2 stitches and come out. There we go. This is our dot number 4. And now we need to go back, make a back stitch to number 3 and go down. There you go. Does it start to make sense? After 4 comes 5. In our chart, 5 goes to the right, 2 to the right. Let's count 2 to the right to come up. And now we do a back stitch to 4 to go down. There we go. You see how it starts to shape? Well, probably not yet, but we'll get there. From 5 to 6, the next number is 6, so we need to find 6. 6 is a diagonal, so we go 2 over and 2 down. 2 over and 2 down. This will be number 6. We're coming up at number 6, and we're going back to number 5. All right, here we go. Number 7 is an intersection with the line where we started. Okay, so let's find number 7. 2 down and come up and make a back stitch to number 6. There we go. And now you can see that the first part is completed. All right, now we need to travel down here a little bit. Now first we need to travel through this little square, the center square. So we travel down from 7 to 8. Let's find 8. 8 is 2 down from 7. Right here. We come up and we stitch back into 7. Here we go. All right. From 8 to 9, we go straight down to start the next loop. So we go 2 down to come up for number 9, and we stitch back into 8. From 9 to 10, we need to work a diagonal. So to find number 10, we count 2 down and 2 over to come up, and then we go back to number 9. And I think now you start to see that it's pretty much, we just, let's take a look here. So we just started here, and then it's really just making, we're going 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 line all around to make our motif. Okay, for number 11 is 2 over to the left from number 10, 2 over, and then we stitch back to number 10. There we go. Number 12 is up from 11, 2 up to get to number 12, stitch back to 11. Number 13 is a diagonal. Okay, so we have to go 2 up and 2 over to go to number 13, 2 up and 2 over. and then we go back to 12, the previous stitch, make our back stitch, and here we go. The next one brings us over back to the center square, and we see that this dot is shared 8 and 14. Okay, so we can just come up where the stitch 8 was, right here, which is 2 to the right of the last stitch. This is our number 14, and we go back to number 13. There we go. And you see that half of our design at this point is completed. From 14 to 15, 2 to the right, and go and hit 14 and do a back stitch. So the idea is find the new number and then stitch back to the previous number. I will speed up a little bit here and just walk you step by step through the rest of the design. Okay, 15 to 16, 2 to the right, stitch number 16, and the back stitch to 15. 16 to 17 is a diagonal, so we go 2 over and 2 down, 2 over and 2 down, and we go back to 16. Okay. At this point, I just want to briefly talk about troubleshooting. If you miscounted, okay, it's a very easy fix. Just pull out the thread from your needle, and then you can just work on the top of your embroidery and pull out one loop after the other until you get to where your mistake was. Okay, so just from the top, go back loop by loop. You just rethread that, and that's all there is to it. So if you have miscounted any threads, or if it doesn't come out as it should, just take out the needle, and on the surface of your embroidery, just pull out one loop at a time. All right, so let's fix this. Here we need to go back. This is our stitch from 17 back to 16. From 17 to 18 we go down, straight down, so 2 down to come up for 18, go back to 17, 18 to 19 goes over, 2 to the left, and come up for 19, and make a back stitch to 18. From 19 to 20 we have a diagonal, so we go 2 over and 2 over to the left and 2 up, 2 over to the left and 2 up, and go back to 19. And from 20 to 21 we go straight up to hit the 15 again, and stitch down back to 20, and 3 parts of our design are completed. Next we need to travel here through along the square from 15 from 21 to 22, going up straight. So 21 and 22 actually hits the start where we started, but we're not done yet, so don't get too excited. We keep on traveling. So from 22, which is the same as the start, we go back to 21. 22, see, just keep on traveling. So 22 to 23, let's find 23 is 2 up, and go back to 22. Here comes the diagonal. From 23 to 24, we go 2 up and 2 over. 2 up and 2 over. And go back to 23. Little tangle. There we go. 24 to 25 is going to the right. So 2 to the right to come up for number 25. And go make a back stitch to 24. From 25 we go down to 26. So 2 down. And go back to 25. Here is our last diagonal that we need to work from 26 to 27. So we go 2 down and 2 to the left, 2 down and 2 to the left, and go back to number 26. And here comes the last stitch. I have indicated it here as E, or I can also, you can say it's a 28 back to where we started. So come up right there where we started. You can see that. And then we go to stitch number 27 to make our last back stitch. And here's our completed little design. So it might be a little bit confusing. So always find the next number. And that's where you come up with your needle. And then you do a back stitch to the previous number to go down. Everything is connected, and so when you come back to the beginning, let's see if I can mark that here. If you come back to the beginning, to the first stitch, this is the start, I'm just marking it here. So you started with your thread right here, but this is where the start is indicated on the pattern right here. All right, so you came out here and then you made your first back stitch to the start, and that would be here, and then you just take it down, take it around from here all the way around. All right, here we go. So you can already see, congratulations by the way, on your completed design. You can already see that this is actually a quite fun little design to make, and you can just imagine a blanket that has all those little patience designs in the center. Here is a surprise for you. What comes next, of course, is that we will be taking off the design. Make sure that you take off the slip knot so that it doesn't get pulled in. All right, okay, there we go. We can release that. Now we can take carefully the design off. I don't want to pop it off and it goes flying, so here we go. So what do we need to do next? Of course we have to take care of the threads, weave in the ends. Okay, here's a little surprise for you. Take a look at this. This design allows you to have a beautiful backside. And you might be giggling by now. It's like, oh, here she is with her backside again. But this actually has an extra surprise for you, that the back is as beautiful as the front. So here's the reason now why I wanted you to have the slip knot here on the right. Because if you now look, those two ends are so close together You can weave them in together, or you can make a knot and barely notice that it's there. Let me just do this quickly so that you can see the results. There we go. And I will just clip this off. All right. And here is the back. Does this remind you of string art? It surely does remind me of string art. And so this is the third childhood memory of this week's lesson. So there is the puzzle to put the pieces together, connect the dots, which we have done certainly a lot of. And then when you turn it over, the back of your design is string art. Okay, so this is what it looks on the front. This is what it looks on the back. And you know, some of my kids said, "Oh, I like the back better than the front." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, okay, go ahead, just rub it in." So let me just put those two next to each other so that you can see that a little bit. So there is what we have stitched with the back stitch. And if you follow the directions, the instructions that I'm giving you, the back will look like this, like string art. Now, and this closes the loop. If you use this little motif on a blanket, on an Afghan, it's perfectly, that makes it perfectly reversible. So you have beautiful artwork, embroidery artwork on your blanket or Afghan, but it's reversible. You don't have to worry about if the back looks ugly or not, because it won't. All right. And if you are really into it, you could even, you know, on your blanket make some like that and make some like that. So basically stitch from one side and then you reverse it and make a few other motifs and stitch them from the other side. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed that surprise, and I think at this point I need to go to take a break. So if you notice a little cut here, this we cut out an incoming phone call, and I used that as an opportunity to just rearrange everything here to get ready to show you how to work the patient's design on the hexagon pin loom. And you can see this looks a little bit like a construction site here, but let's get started right away. So we'll keep this right here for now. And here's our handy dandy ruler. We will use a very long thread. You just need one color, but we'll use a very long thread here. And this is like 36 inches. 30 inches will be enough, but just to be on the safe side, I use 36, which is 3 times the length of a ruler. 1, 2, 3, and clip. We make a slip knot close to the end, to one end, right here, and then we can thread the other end into the needle before the needle goes into hiding, and that's our thread. Let's put it right here. Okay, so this is our thread, and then let's take a quick look at our loom. This looks a little bit wild here. I have prepped it a little bit to make sure that I get it right and don't miscount and things like that. And we don't really need the rubber bands, but I want to show you just, you know, we have used it in the past to determine the center. And the center, I'll put in a pin, would be right here. Okay, and you see that the needles, the pins that we have here, they intersect a little bit above to the left. Okay, so we will not start in the center for this design, which means we have to count threads. Let me get rid of the rubber bands here. And so this was just for demonstration purposes, and then we will start counting. I leave those pins in here, that's where they intersect. Okay, but we will start counting, and on the hexagon what we have to count is we have to count 20 up. So let's start here at the bottom and then count up. So count with me. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So here's the 20th thread, and you can see that the pin is put in right above the 20th thread. Does that make sense? Okay. So the other thing that we need to count so that they intersect, we count from the left inwards. So we count from the bottom up, 20 threads, and now we count from the left inwards, and we need to count 11. Okay, so let's see, take a look here. This is like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, and right after that 11th thread is where we put the pin. Does that make sense? So different numbers, we count 20 up and 11 over. Why is that? Because that has to do with the hexagon mass. Okay, we have more threads here than we have going across. We have to accommodate from that, in addition to the fact that there's an uneven number of threads. So the motif will not be perfectly centered right here, because we have to deal with uneven numbers of threads, and that's true for the square loom as well as for the hexagon loom. Okay, by now at least we have the center. So we have, let's take a look. So now here we have the thread, and here we have our fabric prepared. We know where we want to start, right here. And there's one more thing that's missing. So that we can make this, we have to know how to make it. We need a pattern. And so here comes the revelation for this week's title. Yes, I'm really using a connect the dot for the pattern. Okay, you will find this connect the dots in this week's worksheets, and you will find it like one time like this, where you have to connect the dots, and you will find it also completed. Let me just, this is what I just used before, so you will find something similar to this where it's completed. You can work with whatever you like, but for practicing purposes, I do suggest that you print out, if you can, one of the ones that only has the numbers on it, and then draw with a marker or what have you, do really a connect the dots, because this might help you when you actually work it later on your hexagon. So let's take a look. Now there's an S/E right here, and that indicates the start and the end. Actually, can we zoom in here at this point, please? Thank you. Oh, that's perfect. Excellent. Let me move this up a little bit. So here we go. Now you can see it a little bit better. SE stands for start and end, and the number 1 is right here. Okay. So this is the dot for number 1, and we connect that to the start. You're probably thinking, why does she go not from start to number 1? Because we're going to work the back stitch. So throughout our pattern, when we work our pattern, we will find the next number and then do a back stitch to the previous number. Okay? So after 1 comes 2. The 2 is right here. And let's connect from 2 to 1. 3 to 2, 4 to 3, 5 to 4, 6 to 5. And you already see, I'm not sure if you can see it here in the video, but you know there are all these little dots. So this is, for example, this will be a back stitch from 6 to 5. That's a diagonal. So you will have to count, 2 up and 2 over, or 2 down and 2 over. All right, 6 to 7, and this completes the first part of our design right here. You can see it. All right, so this one is equaling, you start here and then you go around here. All right, from 7 to 8, or from 8 to 7, because we will make back stitches, 9 to 8, 10 to 9, 11 to 10, 12 to 11, 13 to 12, and here the 14 is shared with the 8, 14 to 13, 15 to 14, 16 to 15, 17 to 16, 18 to 17, 19 to 18, 20 to 19, 21 to 20, 22 to 21, and you see here this forms the little center, which you can see right here. Okay, that's the center here and in the design, and when it's actually worked. 21 to 23, or since we are making back stitches, 23 to 21, 22, sorry, 24 to 23, 25 to 24, 26 to 25, 27 to 26, and there's one more. Here's the last stitch, which would be 28, or the end, and go back to 27. And here is your completed design. Okay, so if you want to do a dry run or practice, I suggest just print out the dots and then connect the dots. You can go from 1 to 2 and just go cruise around to make the design, or you can do what I just did, that you actually practice how you will be stitching. Like, you find the next number and then you stitch back to the previous one. Let's take a look at what this looks like in real life. Okay, so here's our loom, and here is our thread, and I will use the method to anchor my loop here, and I'll do this to the right, and there's a reason for it. If you already peeked in for the Zoom Loom, you already know why. If not, if you just fast forward it right here, excuse me, just trust me, okay? Put it, I suggest that you put it here. No big deal if it's not, but it helps. So anchor your slip knot here and then go between the loom and the fabric to the back side. Right here, okay, here's our back side. And then come up where the two pins intersect. Let me see if I can show you. Do you see where the two pins intersect? That's where you want to get started. Okay, and that's where we come up. Whoopie-doo. At this point we can take out the pins and just make sure that you put them into a safe place, that they don't get eaten by the dog and the cat or found by the kids. All right, now this might be a little bit confusing, but let me explain to you where the thread comes out. This is not our starting point here on the chart, but it's number 1. Why is that? Because we want to do a back stitch. Okay, so we go back from 1 to the start, and for consistency we do that from the very beginning. Okay, so here's where we come up. This is number 1, and we stitch back to the start, to the starting point. Okay, so we go to the right, and like with previous stitches, we go over 2 threads to the right. I've forgotten to move this up. Let me finish that first stitch and then I'll fix that. So here's our first back stitch. From 1 we went back to the start. Okay, give me just a second to slide up the fabric. Okay, so sorry about that. All right, what's the next stitch? Here from 1 we go to 2. We have to find 2 and then we will stitch back to 1. The number 2 is 2 threads to the left from 1. So we count 1, 2 to the left and come up. All right, this is our number 2 right here. And now we need to do a back stitch back to 1. Okay, let's do that. So we stitch back to number 1, make a back stitch. Here's our second back stitch. Okay, what we have done here is this one and this one. Here's number 3. We have to find number 3. Number 3 is a diagonal from 2. So we have to go 2 over and 2 up, or 2 up and 2 over. 2 to the left from the previous stitch and 2 up to find number 3. Here's number 3. And we're stitching back to number 2. Excuse me. Oh, it's getting crowded out here. All right, here we go. All right, that is our third stitch. Number 3. Number 4 is 2 up from number 3. So all we need to do is count 2 up and come up for number 4. And we make a back stitch to number 3. There we go. All right, let's compare. Number 5 is 2 to the right of number 4. So we go 2 to the right and come up, which is number 5. And then we stitch back to number 4. Looks a little bit crowded with the thread right now, but that will get better. And I'll make pauses in between so that you can still follow. From 5 to 6, we have another diagonal to work that goes down. So down 2 and 2 over to find number 6, which brings us here. And then we go back to number 5. And here's our second diagonal. And then you see here on the chart, from 6 to 7, we go straight down, 2 down to go to number 7, which is shared with one of the previous dots, number 1. Okay. And again, we make a back stitch to number 6. And you can see here the first loop is completed. On our example, this is this loop right here. Move this over a little bit. Here we go. So this loop right here is now complete. Okay, we just keep on traveling that same way. So here now is a straight down to form the center. From 7 to 8, we go 2 down to come up, and then we go back to 7. And from 8 to 9, we start the new loop. So we go straight down from 8 to 9, another stitch down, 2 down to come up, and back to 8. Now from 9 to 10, we have another diagonal to work, so I suggest count 2 down and 2 to the left, 2 down and 2 to the left, and then go back to number 9. Here's your new diagonal. From 10 to 11, you go straight to the left, so 2 to the left, to come up for number 11. Okay, and go back to number 10. From 11 to 12, we need to go up, straight up. So let's go 2 up. And go back to number 11. And when I say go back to number 11, at this point there's really just one thread. You just go back to that previous stitch that you worked, okay? 12 to 13 is a diagonal, so 2 over and 2 up, or 2 up and 2 over, whatever you prefer. That brings you to number 13. And bring it back to number 12. And 13 goes to 14, and on your chart you see 14 shares the same dot as 8. So we already have that done right here. So come out right here for number 14, and then we go back into stitch number 13. Here we go, and the second loop is completed. We're traveling over from 14 to 15, which is another bar of that inner square. So 2 to the right brings us to 15, back stitch to 14. From 15 to 16, we need to travel out a little bit more, so we are going farther to the right, 2 to the right to get to 16. And back to 15. Here we go. And you see that we are already starting the third loop right here. And at this point, I want to show you a little bit troubleshooting. Okay, you can see here from 16 to 17, that's another diagonal. You have to go 2 down and 2 over, or 2 over and 2 down. And just imagine you missed it. Okay, I'm just poking in anywhere. So this is like I'm going 3 down and 1 over, and I have a wrong stitch. Whoa, that looks crooked, doesn't it? Okay, with this back stitch, any fixes are really easy once you notice them, either when you notice them immediately or when something just doesn't match up in your design. Don't worry, all you need to do is a really easy troubleshooting fix. Take out your needle, okay, and then you can fix everything from the top of your working area. Okay, just pull out each loop one at a time. Here you go. All right, and if you now start pulling the next loop, you'll see how this thread advances here. So you can pretty much undo your complete design just by pulling one loop at a time out, and it goes very easily and quickly. Okay, so if you have miscounted at some point, don't give up, don't be disappointed. It's a really easy fix. Just unthread your needle and pull out one loop at a time and work your way backwards. Okay, let's get back to work here. So I undid 2 stitches, so we have to redo the stitch here. From 15 to 16 we are already up here, so we just need to go back to 15 at this point. Here we go. And now we work our diagonal. So 2 over and 2 down, 2 over and 2 down, right here. And go back to number 16. All right, from 17 we go straight down to 18. And I'm speeding this up a little bit because that's pretty much all there is to it. Go 2 down for 18, go back to 17. From 18 to 19, we need to go 2 to the left. 2 to the left for 19, going back to 18. 19 to 20, we have to work a diagonal. So 2 over and 2 up. 2 over and 2 up. And going back to 19. 20 to 21, we go straight up for 2, and that also brings us back to number 15, same entry point. We're going back to 20. All right, and then we travel up the last side here from our center square from 21 to 22. Well, that's getting a little bit crowded there, so the 22 is the same as our starting point, back to 21. We keep on traveling up straight from 22 to 23. It's 2 stitches up and go back to 22. Next we need to work a diagonal from 23 to 24. 2 up and 2 to the right is one way to get there. 2 up and 2 to the right is 24, and we go back to 23. (24) to 25 is going 2 to the right. And we're going back to 24. 25 to 26 is going 2 down. This is 26, and we're going back to 25. And here's already our last diagonal that we worked from 26 to 27. So 2 down and 2 over. 2 down and 2 over. Here's number 27, going back to 26. And you know, every time I say going back, that means you're doing a back stitch. And last not least, we're going to the 28, or the ending stitch, which is also where we started. So that's easy to find at this point, right here, and going back to 27. All right. So back stitch is you step ahead first, and then you stitch back to the previous stitch. All right, this is our new design. It looks remarkably like the previous one, doesn't it? Kind of, duh, of course. All right, so at this time you're complete, and if you have not watched the Zoom Loom instructions, you are in for a big surprise. What we need to do next, of course, is we need to weave in the ends. So carefully remove the slip knot from the embroidery, and then let's just take it off the loom as we usually do. One side with the needle. Here we go. And then just carefully lift up one side at a time. All right, can release that slip knot. Wiggle a little bit. All right, here we go. Are you ready for your surprise? All right, so this is what we stitched. Let's take a look at the back. Do I hear a wow? Yes, the back looks as pretty as the front. So here's what we stitched, and because we were very strict with our back stitches, the back stitches automatically formed a very beautiful motif on the back as well. This is not always the case, so but if you follow the directions that I'm giving you, it will make this pretty pattern on the back. Doesn't that remind you of string art? So yes, it does. All right. And this to me is kind of the third piece of the childhood memories. So there's the connect the dots, and then there's making puzzles, and the third one is the string art that we have right here. And so all we need to do is really take care of those yarn ends, and I will show you quickly. This is why I told you let's do the let's put the slip knot to the right, on the right of our loom somewhere, because now when you look at it, it comes out automatically very close to where the ending thread winds up. Okay, let's take a look here. We can release the slip knot now, and you can use any fancy or knot method to take care of the threads. I will do the quick and dirty knot method here. Well, it's not really dirty, but that's what people say. Okay, so double knot and just clip it off. All right, and here we go. So if you now take a look at this, here's the front and the back. And you know, I mentioned it before, my children said, Mama, the back looks prettier than the front. I was like, okay, let me tell you something. Just imagine you embroider this motif or this design onto a motif that you use as part of a blanket. Okay, so the very pretty thing is that it's completely reversible. So if you have a blanket and you make it pretty with this design, it's absolutely reversible. So let's pretend this is our blanket, and then when you reverse it, it still looks pretty. So you can just imagine you have a few hexagons, or you know, for if you have the Zoom Loom squares that you turn into a blanket, and just once in a while you embroider them with our new backstitch motif. You can actually even mix them, so some from the right, some from the left, and it will look very, very pretty on a blanket either way. So it's a completely reversible design. All right, there's one more thing that I would like to mention, and this is for both. Let me just clean this up a little bit here. This is for both the Zoom Loom, or this, whether you work squares or hexagons, it will work for both looms. Can we please zoom out a little bit? Right. So let me just finish setting this up. Yes, let me use this one. This has the ends woven in. And here is the square with the ends woven in. And the opening picture, you also saw this one and this one. So a very tiny motif and a bigger motif. And I just want to suggest here, what you see here is, this is the one that we just worked, okay? And remember how in our pattern we always went over 2 threads? I think you know where this is going. If you make the same design and you just work over 1 thread, you will get this. If you make the same design and you work over 3 threads with each backstitch, you will get a bigger one. And that's all there is to it. And this works, of course, since it's the same design, it works on, you know, no matter where you stitch it. So this is what we made today. We go over 2 threads. If you go over 1 thread, you shrink it to about this size. If you go over 3 threads, you make it bigger to about this size. Okay, you can absolutely do the same thing on the Zoom Loom. And one of my kids asked us, like, Mama, do you still have the pretty string art on the back? And the answer is yes, absolutely you do. Okay, so this is what it will look like. This is what we worked today, and this is, so you can see how they are pretty much equal in the looks. And if you work only over 1 thread, you shrink it and it looks like this. If you work over 3 threads, it will look a little bit bigger and it will look like this. You can actually see the string art a little bit more. All right? Okay, I think that's it for week 4. Play with this absolutely reversible design a little bit. Use any color of your choice. And I'm looking forward to see the front and the backs of your work for week 4. All right, so our 2 looms. Now we should put this one over here and this one over here to have them together with the actual work. Okay. Did I get this completely in? Yeah. Okay, here we go. That looks decent, doesn't it? All right, that would be all for this week. Thank you very much for watching and happy embroidery. Bye.